Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast,
a space dedicated to spreading the message that you have the power within to create everything you seek.
So if you're ready to enroll in a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with us.
We're your hosts, Rudi and Aniston, and this is Empowered Life. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast. My name is Rudi Riekstins. I'm your host, and I'm excited to bring you another incredible episode where we bring you people that are living life. You see, because we talk about in the Empowered Life Podcast that life is about doing the work, and that in every single moment of every single day, we get to take the work that we're doing and put it into practice. An example of somebody that is doing this in so many facets of life is today's incredible guest that we're bringing into the show. This is Jamil Damji. I'm so excited to have Jamil join us today. He is the host of the A&E Triple Digit Flip show. He's also an internationally recognized real estate investor. He's an entrepreneur. He's the co-founder of one of, if not the largest real estate organization, which we can talk about in a few moments' time, called Keegley. But what I really want to focus about is the amount of success that Jamil has had in his life. But he's going to be the first person to tell you that he's had equally as many successes that were failings forward. And that's about taking the work and putting it into practice. And this episode, I think, is going to just be incredible. I hope you're as excited as I am. Jamil, brother, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome on the Empowered Life Podcast, man.
Wow. Thank you so much for that introduction, Rudi. I'm humbled and I appreciate it so much. Big fan of you, and I'm grateful to be here today. Thank you.
Oh, likewise, man. You know, for the benefit of our audience, I got to meet you, I think, about 3 years ago. We were in Vegas together at an event, and we were stepping outside of the venue, and we were just being introduced. And when I walked away, I was like, man, that is a guy I need to know. And we had such a short conversation in that moment. I mean, we spent a bit of time together, but you and I, just in interacting in a group of guys, there was a very short interaction, but I could immediately connect to your heart. And I could tell you were somebody who is grounded in impact, wants to connect with people, serve and support people to live their highest and their greatest potential. So I'd love for you, if you don't mind, to start today's episode by telling us a little bit about how did you get to where you got to today? I already know a little bit of your story, and so I would love to set the stage for our audience. You wanted to be a doctor. You were studying to be a doctor. You had to apply to be accepted into a doctoral program, and then you were not accepted, and you wanted to take your life back. Could you start with your journey there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm of East Indian descent and first generation immigrant child. And, my sister and I were latchkey kids. My parents worked very hard our whole lives, 12-hour long days. And they wanted more for their kids, and that's why they were working so hard. And, for my mom and dad, their idea of success was what they could see externally from our surroundings, right? And that meant a high status position in your career. And for my father specifically, that meant being a doctor. And so I really wanted to make my parents proud. Like any kid, I was really interested in bringing to the family, bringing to our little community in our home, some success, because I saw how hard everybody was working, and most months we barely made it. And it was heartbreaking for me to see that. It was heartbreaking for me to see my mother struggle and my father struggle, and my sister and I just not having a clue on what we could do as just young kids on how to change it. So I did what I was supposed to do. I studied really hard, and I did phenomenally well in my undergraduate degree. It was an exercise and health physiology in the kinesiology department. It's a bachelor's of science from the University of Calgary. I had a nearly 4.0 GPA. It was Dean's List. I took the exam for medical school entrance, and I actually did pretty well on it. So well. It's a funny story. I can talk about it now because I don't think it'll affect the guy, but somebody cheated off me on that exam. One of my cousins, same last name. And so, he actually ended up getting into medical school, and I didn't. Right. And so, looking back at it, I was in that situation. I was in that spot where I had made the application to get in, and I just was rejected. For whatever reason, something about me, the application, who knows? Who knows what it was that just rubbed the admissions counselor the wrong way or made them feel I wasn't quite prepared for it. Whatever that reason was, it was kismet for me, because I had a epiphany. I realized that I had outsourced agency in my life to somebody else. There was another human being who was making a life decision for me and changed the trajectory of my life. And even though I had this plan and I was successful in all of the steps that you need to make this plan a reality, it just wasn't in the cards for me. And somebody else made that choice. And when I realized that I wasn't living by my own terms, that I wasn't living in a life that I had control over, that was eye-opening, because it didn't matter how hard I worked. It didn't matter how good my grades were. It didn't matter how many hours I volunteered, how well I scored on the entrance exam. None of it mattered. If somebody just decided no, then it was a no. So that set me on a path. It set me on a path of wanting to find a place in the world for me and my unique abilities, my unique voice. Also, extremely fearful of what I was walking into, because I knew nothing of entrepreneurship. Although my father was an entrepreneur, he had a family business with his brothers. It wasn't successful. It was a very hard struggle for my father and his brothers their whole lives. So I didn't see success in entrepreneurship. I saw struggle. I saw dad coming home months without a paycheck. I saw that really, affecting my mother and affecting what we could eat that month and how we lived that month and where we went that month. So I didn't have laid in front of me a pathway to entrepreneurship that was very bright, right? What I saw was, if you go into business for yourself, you're going to work very hard, and something else could also come and knock you off your path, but at least you get to decide. So that's what I did. I made the choice. I found myself in a fledgling company right after I left the academic pursuit. And, that put me in proximity to starting to dip my feet into the real estate world. And, it's interesting, although I had a lot of success in real estate between the years of 2002 and 2008, I had that success by working very hard and having that energy of, winner takes all. I'm gonna be the winner in a zero-sum game. That means that there has to be a loser. I will get to where I need to go by any means necessary. It was very Machiavellian. It was very, very, very much in that type of energy where I'm not going to let anybody get in my way. And oddly enough, the result of that, the charge that I had associated that success with, was negative. And it didn't last. It was fleeting. And so that began the journey inward for me, because I started to realize that, success wasn't how much money you had. Success was really an inside job.
Gosh, that is so beautiful. And, the reason I wanted to have you on the show was we've had a private conversation a couple of weeks back, and we were just talking about some of the things that we are interested in. And we have some commonalities in, study the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza and attending his retreats and in our mindfulness and our practice, and also wanting to take what we've learned in life and turning around and being able to teach it. What I don't like so much about the podcasting industry is that, we always start off with how successful somebody is and how well they've done. And then they share some tips or tricks or hacks of what it is that they're wanting to move people forward in. And yet with you so beautifully want to just serve and support people regardless of where you find them in life. And if somebody's coming to you because they want to create generational wealth, you have something to be able to serve or support them because you've been able to create that for you and for your family. And in all the different ventures that you have, there's always one common theme. I would love for you to speak in a little bit about what is that one common thread that is so important to you in life and business.
Well, for me, it's that we are really reflecting everything that's happening in our outer world from inside of us. And so if you want to be successful in real estate, if you want to, attract or do bigger deals, if you want better relationships in your business and you want to attract or find alignment with people that are going to take you to higher plateaus or more interesting situations and experiences, well, you have to find that pattern that energy within yourself first. Because what I've realized is, one of the most important diagrams I think I was ever given as a child in elementary school was Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And when looking at that pyramid, it really reflects the evolution of the human consciousness, right? Where we find our level of mind. And when you're looking at the bottom part of that pyramid, it's very physical. It's very, I have to eat. I have to have shelter. I need warmth. I just need these specific things to be able to breathe, right? And you can find those things in prison. So the physiological needs are met, right? Doesn't mean that you're having a happy, fulfilled life in prison or anywhere else if you're just meeting those needs. But if those needs are met, then now we get to graduate to the second level. And now the second level is about, okay, well, now that I've got the physical needs met, I need to be safe, right? Every time I go outside, I feel like I'm being attacked, or maybe there's a community or a clan of people that want to kill my family and take our pelts or whatever it is. And I'm just talking from an evolutionary standpoint, from how we became how we are. That sense of safety was needed. And so that's when we started finding, security within the family unit, and how having somebody with us and children and people to help protect what we're creating is necessary. And so once we can check that box, now we get into that next level where we start to want to build external relationships and find community and find some belonging, some sense of resonance with others, because we are a social creature and we do need others to do pretty much everything that we do in life. I've never had a situation where I made money single-handedly. I've always had to make money with somebody else. I've always had to accomplish something in relation to someone else. And so when you see the reality that there's more than you required in anything that happens, that means that we have to be collaborative at some level. And so I think that third level is really understanding that sense of how can we collaborate? And is there a way for us to ascend that mind of, where we were thinking from the physiological and the safety needs, can we get from a place of competitiveness to a place of collaborativeness? And I think as we ascend farther up that pyramid, we find now the more creative parts of ourselves, where we can tap into places within us that are service-based, about really caring about what is happening with other people and actually what's happening with your current status of how you think and the perspectives that you're holding in your life. And so one of the things that I think I've been able to at least uncover, because I'm definitely not at that actualized, part of the pyramid. I think that's the top level of Maslow's hierarchy, is self-actualization. I'm on the path there. I'm every day seeking and finding better and more aspects of myself that I either need to love and accept, or I have to accentuate and let shine. And in so doing, finding what the highest expression of me is. And I don't know if that is a lifelong process. I think it is. I don't think that I ever get to a destination where I'm like, I've arrived, I'm actualized. I don't know that that's how it works. But what I can say is that I can't even think about that pursuit if I'm worried about how to pay my mortgage. I can't even think about the humanity in me and the humanity in others if I have to worry about how I'm going to feed my family. And so one of my gifts has been to be able to understand how to create financial freedom. I don't believe money makes you happy. I think it buys you the time to find what makes you happy, so that you can really look around and see what lights me up. And Rudi, it comes to me from this life experience. I've had a couple of near-death experiences in my life. One recently where I had a spinal injury, and I needed to have a very invasive surgery where they fused my cervical spine from C3 all the way up to all the way to C7. A very, very traumatic surgery. And at the same time, my marriage was dissolving, and I was having a hard time with showing up in my business in the way that I wanted to. And so, I looked at it like the metaphor of I was this beautiful Christmas tree, in somebody's living room, and I had all these incredible ornaments on me. I had, this hit TV show. I have this nationally franchised company. that I feel disconnected from. I have all of these incredible people that I've been able to impact and help. And I have this community of high vibe entrepreneurs who are on a path of finding themselves with me, all these great achievements. And it was like somebody came and shook the tree so hard that all of the ornaments were on the ground, shattered. And, as desperate as I was to try to pick up every ornament and place it back on my branches, they were broken. And then I had to come to the realization that, oh my goodness, I'm not a Christmas tree, I'm a tree, and that's my fundamental aspect. And it doesn't matter what I have achieved, whether it's being a husband, whether it's being a millionaire, whether it's being a executive of a nationally franchised company, a television star, whatever these achievements are that I had, none of them mattered because they didn't essentially make my identity. They were just ornaments that I had hung on my branches. And when a wind came by that was strong enough to shake me, they all broke. And when I found that reality, it was sobering. It was really eye-opening, because then I got to really come to grips with what it was that lights me up in my life and how I define who I am. It's very interesting when we meet people, how people identify themselves in a quick 30-second elevator pitch of who am I. They tell you all the things they've done, right? They tell you, I've done this. I have this company, I have this thing, I have this group, I have this other accomplishment, this other achievement. And it's this long laundry list. Even the bio that my team sent over to you that you read in the beginning of the podcast, I hate it because it's, again, just it's the achievements. What I really think those bios need to relate is, what do I love in my life? What are the things I love? That's what matters.
So I want to take us back a little bit, because you've so beautifully given us a holistic view of who you are as a man today, but we don't have all of the context. And so for the benefit of the audience, what I would love to do is bring in a little bit of the color. You might not like the beginning of this because we're going to talk a little bit more about your success, but I want people to understand that sometimes with success, you get failings forward at the same time. And I had started today's episode very intentionally saying that you have driven a tremendous amount of success in your life. You've supported, just your franchise organization, I believe, has over 4,000 community members, which is massive in and of itself. But, that doesn't define your success, but it also doesn't speak into the failings forward that you had to have that brought you to where you are today. The previous question I asked you was, what was the one common theme? And for the benefit of the listener, I want to remind everyone that you said all your work is really grounded in creating impact in other people. And what you're really doing is wanting to create stability and structure so that people can move up the hierarchy needs so that they can eventually get to a place where they find what is their joy, their peace, or their passion. I wrote it down that you said, money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you the time to find your happiness, which I think is just so incredibly accurate, because so many people are chasing something that is elusive to them. So I know that you wanted to be a doctor and it didn't work out for you. I also know you're highly intelligent. And if you really wanted to do that, you could have found another way and you could have made that happen. But in that moment of this person deciding your future and one single person outside of you saying yes or no and it having an impact in your life, that you had that key pivotal moment where you said, hell no, I'm going to take control of my life. I'm going to decide where my life's going to go. And you started taking action. At some point, you obviously wanted to get into real estate. At one point, you wanted to take control of your net worth so that you could create stability and structure. Then you became very successful. You brought your sister along. You brought your mom and your dad along. And then all of a sudden you were thriving. But I'm also aware that you lost everything, including your parents' home, what was your childhood home, your sister, your mom, your dad, everybody, your dog, all moved into a 2-bedroom apartment, and you had to kind of start all over again. So many people see the accolades. They see the bio that's in the beginning of an episode, but they don't always see some of what was the journey in the middle. Can you speak into a little bit? What was it like, finally breaking through, getting the notoriety and respect from your community, from your family, of you being an investor and it working, and then that very thing being the cause of the demise?
Oh, it it was terrible, right? It was the realization and the actualization for my family, all of the deepest fears that they had in me doing this in the first place. For myself, it was really coming to grips with that I really didn't know what I was doing. You know, when you are an entrepreneur and you're figuring stuff out, we all suffer through imposter syndrome, and we all feel like we maybe aren't worthy of what we're being given or the success that's finding us. And that just becomes defeating in and of itself, right? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You look at yourself as being unworthy of the success you have. You start to make decisions that will ultimately unwind the success that you have. And then that success finally does unwind, and you're left with, you know, the remnants of what was. And it was really hard because coming from my situation where I hadn't, you know, tasted any luxuries in life as a child, to have then been able to be in a spot where, you know, I had a beautiful home on a hill in my hometown. My mother and father were living in a beautiful lake house that my sister and I had given them for Mother's Day. We all drove nice vehicles. All of the bills were paid, and it disappeared so quickly on a misstep. And you know, that reality of how fickle it was, how just fast you could lose all of it was very, very difficult. And you know, I made some pretty egregious errors in my assessment of what was going on in the real estate market. What was actually driving me to get that, you know, to make the move didn't come from a whole place. It came from a place of lack. It came from a place of competitiveness and comparison with other people. I wanted to be like somebody. I wanted to emulate what another person had achieved. And so this wasn't coming from an authentic place or an authentic expression within me. It was coming from a place of being competitive, of wanting to be bigger than or better than the guy ahead of me. And because that was where I was vibrating, that's where I was thinking, the moves that I made had the associated energy attached to them. And so they unraveled in a way that we could predict. I think that you can see people in life that are successful, or, you know, what we deem success. You can see the highlight reel on social media with the picture perfect life, the car, the house, the watch, you know, the little trinkets that we associate with having come into your, I guess your best version, right? All the little things that we think are the markers of it. But what's interesting is I've never walked a cemetery and seen a tombstone that said, "Here lies so-and-so, Rolls-Royce Cullinan, Rolex Presidential, $250 million net worth, 40,000 square foot home." Never. They never list the BS on your tombstone. It's unnecessary, and nobody cares, because it was just stuff. And so when I was in that low place, there was my parents, because I had put them into the same situation that I was in. I asked them to co-sign on some construction loans that ultimately was our undoing. We all lost our homes. We all lost our vehicles. We lost everything, and it was very fast. And you'd mentioned, you know, my mother, father, sister, niece, 150-pound dog, cat. We're all in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. And I remember when I pulled up to the front door. My mom had been there for a couple of days. I hadn't come to the house yet that we were all going to be staying in. My mom came outside to greet me, and there were tears in her eyes. And it wasn't because of where our station had landed. It was in joy of seeing me. She was just happy to see her kid. And even though those days were some of the hardest for us financially, because we had nothing, and, you know, there was creditors, you know, trying to attach to everything. I mean, when the creditors come, they don't care how you eat. They don't care if you've got heat in your home, they don't care. They just want what is theirs, which is understandable as well, right? They want to make whole their situation, and they want to find reprieve in the money that they're losing because of you. So I understand that. And I don't demonize or vilify anything or anybody that came to get what they wanted to get in that time, because they were owed it. What is remarkable is, in that time, my mom and dad and my sister had a choice to blame me, to point the finger and say, you ruined us. But they didn't.
I want to just ground a little bit for the benefit of the listener, having heard your story, that your desire was to create stability for you so that you could provide stability for your family. You grew up in an environment where you didn't have a lot, so you wanted to create a lot. That was my life story, and we've lived very, very, very similar paths. You've gone into real estate, and I went into business, but very much based on the same foundations. And then you had this experience that was very humbling to you from an egoic perspective, and then also from how do you get to self-reflect as to how do you show up every day? Is this the man that you want to be, and how you want to move forward? What I love about your story, and why I wanted you so much on the podcast today, was to be able to share with our audience that every single person that is going through something hard right now, they're in that position that you were in at that time. And you could turn around and look at it and lick your wounds, or you could turn around and say, hey, what did I do to get here? And what can I do that's going to be different? And how can I take what I've, had, the cards that were so dealt to you that could then support you? What I love so much about you, and why I'm so proud of you as a man and how you show up in the world today, is that you took your instability, then you took your growth of wanting to create wealth, and then you took the loss of all of that and you put it all together. And then you looked at, well, here's what I needed, which was to create stability and to do it in a beautiful, meaningful way. And that is in the pursuit of helping other people. And all the success that came to you came after you made that shift. That's when you became this TV star host. And that's when all of a sudden these massive properties and opportunities and all these things started to fall into your lap. And today you can't turn around and say you're a multimillionaire, you're very successful, you've achieved all these things, but you've done that on the backbone of helping people get out of a position that you were in. And so you were so uniquely qualified to become the man that you've become. And so for the audience, anyone that's going through a struggle, I want to remind you again, through every story, through every podcast episode, you in your pain, if you are finding yourself right now in pain, if you've just come out of a struggle, that struggle is serving the person that you get to become. And that only when you've gone through that are you qualified to be the teacher that you've come here to be, because I believe we all have something to share, and it's in the pursuit of the growth and development of everybody that's around us. Jamil, brother, you have so beautifully changed and pivoted so many times in your life. I know that transformation is a word that is really, really near and dear to your heart. And I would love to turn a little bit of our episode today in speaking to how do you think your life has served you in becoming the person that you are today by constantly being able to detach from who you thought you were so that you could evolve and transform into the person that you've come here to be?
Great question, Rudy. I mean, that's, you have to retire an older version of you in order for a new one to appear or to alchemize in your life, right? And you can't be, for instance, if somebody's listening to this right now and they have a desire to become a successful entrepreneur or whatever it is, and successful business person, well, you have to look at what have you been doing yesterday and today and the day before yesterday that got you to this spot right now, right? What were the behaviors? What are the thought patterns? What are the emotions that you're feeling? What are all the things that are accumulating and contributing to your current story, your current reflection of your life? And then understand that it is a series of little micro choices. It is a series of settling. It is a series of choosing the easier thing. It is a series of choosing not to take that risk or to put yourself in a place where you've extended your effort and really tried something and you pushed through a difficulty or an obstacle. And And that's where the seed of transformation lives, right? And if we look at the caterpillar and butterfly as an example, because it's so beautiful how our creator just puts examples of everything that it's trying to accomplish in us in front of us all the time. Like it's you find our story in every story. You find our story in everything that exists. And our story is one of transformation. Our story is the caterpillar into the butterfly. And if we don't understand that that period of being a chrysalis is necessary, where you molt, I mean, you know, when that caterpillar spins itself up into that cocoon, it's going through a tremendously painful and difficult process in there. It's losing its entire being. It's losing its body. It's dissolving. Even its eyes aren't in the same place when it comes out of that, right? And so we think of that, when you think of how painful that might be or what that would even look like or feel like, can you be angry at the caterpillar for not knowing it's a butterfly? No. How could you? How could it? It's crawling on the ground and the other one takes flight, right? How could the butterfly be angry at the caterpillar for what it was? And how can the caterpillar be angry at the butterfly for what it is? It can't. It just is what it is, right? And so when you're in that process, in that stage of reinventing yourself, of transforming and becoming the better version of you, it starts now. It starts in your choices. It starts in the patterns that you're going to put forth into your life day to day. I think one of the hardest things that people do to sustain their transformation process is that they'll take these massive bites of life change, you know, and it's almost like the person who says on December 31st, well, you know, this is the year that I make $1 million. I finally get in shape and I finally find love and I finally do this. It's like, you're like, okay, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm magically going to be this incredibly disciplined person with a six pack and millions of dollars in the bank. It doesn't work like that. There's time, effort, and courage and obstacles and tests and all of the things that are necessary before you're going to get to that spot. Now, if you have a desire in you, and I think we all do as human beings, we're all born with an innate desire to find that place, to find our ocean, to find where we belong. Like the turtle coming out of the beach knows it's got to walk the beach and go to the water. We know inherently where we belong. If you have that sense within you that you are more than what you're currently living, that you are meant for bigger and higher station in your relationships in life, and that calling to you is so loud that it makes it hard for you to wake up in your current situation. It makes it hard for you to go to your current job. It makes it hard for you to express in the current relationship you have with your spouse because it's just so inauthentic to what that wants from you. Then congratulations, because you have within you the seed of the plant of your life growing, right? And it's going to be painful when that seed cracks. It's going to be absolute hell. But what is it going to be if you don't water that? What is it life going to be if you just stay planted or not even get planted? You just sit back and say, you know what? Not for me this time. I'm going to just settle. I'm going to be okay with barely making it. I'm going to be okay with this superficial or, you know, this relationship that's not serving either myself or my partner. You know, I'm going to be okay with everything just being surface level in my world. I don't know anybody on their deathbed who says, "Hey man, yeah, I had a good ride just coasting." You know, they don't feel that. If they made the choice to stay small and to not express themselves, they regret every decision that they made that wasn't taking that risk to get them to where they wanted to go. They regret not asking that girl out or saying yes to that guy, or they regret not having shown up for their child the way that their child needed them in their life. They regret the things they didn't do that they knew they should have. It's this concept I actually learned from a gentleman named Eric Godsey, and he calls it eating your death cookie. And I know that's a strong statement, but it has a really beautiful meaning. It is looking at the thing in your life right now that you know you have to face. That is that one thing, and there's probably more than one thing, but there's probably one thing glaring at you right now that you know you have to tackle. Maybe it's an addiction. Maybe it's, how you eat. Maybe it's what time you wake up. Maybe it's not exercising, whatever that is. Maybe it's having a hard conversation with your partner. Whatever that death cookie is, that hard thing that you have to do, there is a tremendous amount of grace on the other side of you facing that and eating that death cookie, of tackling that problem, of having that conversation, of finding that courage to get through that difficult process, of being in that transformative cocoon. You take flight. That's the gift. That is the grace. The grace is you get to break out of that thing and you get to fly and you get to soar. And then you get to show all the other caterpillars what their majesty is. And you get to give them the inspiration that they'll need to finally make that step into their cocoon as well. And I think that's what we're all doing here as people. We're finding our way home. And once we understand that there's a path there, we stand on that path and we get as loud and big as we can so that we can be beacons for others, so that they may start the process of finding their own.
So a moment ago, you were talking about, being on your deathbed and never looking back at your life and saying, wow, you know what, I just coasted. Like that was a good life. I just got through that. And so for somebody that is listening to this episode right now and they feel like they are stuck, they're in a difficult place, they're wanting to take action, maybe they're battling an addiction, there's this death cookie that they've got to tackle, and they wanted to move forward so that they wouldn't one day have that regretful image of feeling like they didn't hit their highest and their greatest potential. Knowing that you've gone through so many pivots and changes in your life and you've been dealt some pretty intense death cookies, and I'm going to stick with the theme for a second. You mentioned a few moments ago you've just come through the dissolving of your marriage. I know that obviously was a very difficult period for you with tremendous transformation, caterpillar to a butterfly opportunity. We've spoken about some of your business ventures that didn't work and had to then transform so that you could become who you came to be. You've had this life that you were designed for yourself that didn't pan out, that then moved you into the direction of where you were going. There've been all of these very key transformational moments in your life that have been catalysts for change. And not all of them you would have chosen to have those changes up front. But knowing you've gone through them, looking at who you've beautifully become in the process, what have you learned through that? And if you could you share with our audience, what would be some tips or hacks or advice that you would have for somebody that's going through one of those moments they weren't expecting and now they've got to face this death cookie?
Yeah, man. It's no, I I wouldn't have chosen any of them really if I'd had the ability to say I'll pass on this one. This one doesn't seem like it's going to be a lot of fun, but the cool thing is, Rudy, is that when you look at your life, look at the situation you're in right now, and if you try to ascend your perspective to 10,000 feet, right? That gives you a great perspective, and you get to see how all the roads connect. And what I've found, interestingly enough, is that every single one of those death cookies, every single one of those really pivotal, crappy moments in my life where it I felt like, all right, here's where it all ends. This is where it all just goes downhill, and I'm going to not make it through. But just having enough courage and faith to just show up, even though I felt defeated and it felt really terrible and hard, but just showing up, just getting up and being like, okay, well, it's another day. I'm going to show up for it and I'm going to do my best. That act of perseverance, that act of being available, irrespective of the emotion that it's hard and it's terrible. I think there's something magical in that act. I think that when you do that, it sends a reverberation out into our field of experience in this world, and it magnetizes opportunities, people, relationships to you that are going to take you on the wildest ride of your life. It literally changes your timeline. But you have to be in that place of fear, of hopelessness, of despair, and you have to choose. You've got to choose courage. You've got to choose faith. You've got to choose to be loving. And when you make that choice in that time, in that really difficult time, my goodness, what comes out the other side of that is one of the most beautiful things you'll ever see. And again, life has it so that you'll get to that place where you'll get through that and you'll feel like I'm on top of it and everything is amazing. And then you're going to find your next plateau and your next death cookie to eat, which is the game, right? It wouldn't be fun if we just had to, if life only had one level and one evil boss for us to have to defeat, right? Who would want to play that video game? You need levels. You need to get to bigger and better goblins to defeat in your life and in your mind, in order for you to really enjoy the game. And so, since we're all here playing, we all made the decision to put on this VR headset and come into this world and experience what we're experiencing. Understand that is a sacred choice, that your life is sacred, that it is God expressing and living itself and understanding itself through you. And you have a responsibility for that expression to find itself in the world. You have a responsibility to yourself, to your family, to our Creator, to be able to share with people how one overcomes, how one transforms. There are no people in Scripture that have been remarkable, that had perfect journeys without pain. They put Jesus on a cross. None of us get out of here unscathed. So if we want to be great, then we have to understand that we're going to face great trials. But when we overcome those great trials, our greatness becomes legendary, becomes the impact and the light that others are going to be able to follow so that their greatness can be expressed in the world. So if you are in one of those spots right now, circling back to that, I congratulate you, because you're in the place right now where you can catapult yourself into the most incredible life of your dreams. But that is the place. It doesn't happen somewhere else. It doesn't happen when we're coasting, when all is well. It doesn't happen there. It happens when all is hard, when it's really coming and raining down on us. That's when we grow. That's when we get there. That's when we shine. So be happy that you're in that spot right now, and look for the things that you can do today to further you. I think that we don't need to know the whole path that we're planning or that we want to become in our lives. We don't need to know all of the things that all the people we're going to need to meet and all of the relationships and all of the things. Like, you don't need to know. You don't need to know who's going to walk through that door in 2 months and is going to change your life. You don't know that. You don't need to know that. But what you do need to know is that it's going to happen if you are expecting it to happen. If you are in collaboration with your Creator, if you're living a collaborative life with your Creator, and you have faith that as long as you do what you can do today at your best, that tomorrow the next thing will appear. So if you put it in your head and you put it in your heart and you take one step, that's the best that we got.
So when we started the podcast episode, I said we were going to be in for an incredible journey, and that you were the example of what does it look like. And you brought the fire in the last 7 minutes of this podcast episode, speaking directly to my soul. And for the benefit of the audience, I want to go back just very quickly and abbreviate a little bit of what he so beautifully articulated and how his life has demonstrated this again and again and again. And that is that everything that is happening in your life is preparing you for the person that you get to become, and that in the pain, you get to catapult yourself to freedom. But the catalyst for that shift, the catalyst for that change, the catalyst for that growth is going to only be found in you making a choice, a decision of whether you want to stay where you are or whether you're prepared to do something you've never done. And if you are going to think thoughts of fear and anguish and pain and resent and suffering, you're going to ground yourself energetically, vibrationally, and magnetically to staying in that place. Your brain will look for evidence to reinforce that you need to stay in that place. You'll pull memories from your past, from the news, from social media, everywhere that you are accurate and in needing to stay in fear and anguish and resent. Or you can make a choice, and that choice is to catalyze yourself in an emotional state to freedom, to abundance, to joy, to living a life courageously, to becoming, the journey from the caterpillar to the butterfly, and knowing that the hardship is literally the rocket fuel that's forcing you to be able to go there, forecasting a goal, a dream, or a vision, because it does energetically, emotionally, vibrationally, and then magnetically draw to you the experience of what it is that you're wanting to have, to be, to do. Every single thing that has ever happened, everything that has ever transpired is always preparing you for the person that you get to become. Jamil, brother, man, you really took everybody to school today in the most beautiful way. God is flowing to us and through us. We're an extension of the force that created us, and our lives have value and they have meaning, and we are bringing it into every single episode on the Empowered Life podcast, man, and you did not disappoint today. I want to say thank you so much for joining us. I'm a huge fan of you and all the work that you're doing in the world. How can our audience find you? What is the best way for them to connect with you if they're wanting to learn all things real estate or all things transformation?
Yeah, so you can, and first, Rudi, thank you so much for inviting me onto the podcast today. I had a wonderful time with you. You're a beautiful human being. For those of you that want to connect with me further, you can find me on Instagram at JDAMJI. That's at JDamji. I'm also on YouTube. That's where I teach some of the real estate things that I do. Also, I talk about the inner work that I've been doing for the last couple decades, and that's just youtube.com/Jamil Damji. Those are the two best places to connect.
Brother, you are an incredible human being. I'm looking forward to many, many more partnerships with you. Thank you for joining us on the Empowered Life podcast. To every single listener, I want to just acknowledge you. Thank you for investing in you. I hope that you took something incredible from this episode, and that you remember today more than anything else that you are a freaking butterfly, and that you get to soar and live the most courageous, beautiful life possible. Please rate, review, share, subscribe, tag somebody. Tag, the two of us. If there was something in here that you really liked and that you resonated with, we would love to hear from you. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode of the Empowered Life podcast. We love you. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And we would love your support in leaving us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to check the show notes for more information on how you can find us online and on Instagram. Now go create an amazing day for yourself, and we'll see you again soon.